Close your eyes for a moment and picture this: you're standing in the hushed darkness of a sacred space built thousands of years ago. As you take a single step forward, the walls around you seem to come alive, transforming your breath into a rolling wave of sound that lingers in the air like an invisible presence. This isn't just architecture, it's a carefully orchestrated symphony of stone, where every curve, every corridor, and every chamber was designed not just to be seen, but to be heard. Ancient builders didn't merely construct temples and tombs, they composed them using echoes like musical notes and silence as their resting beats. What if I told you these spaces weren't just places of worship, but the world's first concert halls, where the very walls sang back to worshippers in voices that felt divine? From the whispering galleries of Mayan pyramids to the thunderous reverberations inside Egypt's great hypostyle hall, our ancestors understood something profound about sound that modern science is only now beginning to decode. They knew that architecture could shape not just space, but emotion, that a perfectly timed echo could make a priest's chant feel like the voice of the gods, or a moment of calculated silence could send shivers down the spine of every person in the room. These weren't accidents, they were masterpieces of acoustic engineering, crafted by cultures separated by oceans and centuries, yet united in their pursuit of something transcendent. So how did they do it without computers, without microphones, without any of the tools we rely on today? How did ancient architects turn stone into an instrument? That's the mystery we're about to unravel together. Over the next minutes, we'll step into the shoes of these forgotten composers, tracing their secrets through the echoes of history. You'll hear how a single clap in Greece's Epidorus theater can reach the very last row without amplification, how Neolithic burial mounds amplify certain frequencies to alter consciousness, and why some of these acoustic tricks still baffle modern engineers. This isn't just a story about the past, it's a reminder that the walls around us have always been listening, and if we're quiet enough, we might just hear what they've been trying to tell us all along. To truly appreciate the genius of these ancient soundscapes, we need to listen not just with our ears, but with the mind of a physicist. Picture sound as a living thing, a ripple moving through air, dancing across stone surfaces, bending around corners. When a chant or drumbeat echoed through a sacred chamber, it wasn't random chaos. It was a meticulously choreographed performance where every wall, pillar, and ceiling played its part. The secret lies in something called sound wave reflection. Hard, smooth surfaces like polished limestone or granite don't absorb sound. They throw it back, sometimes with such precision that a whisper from one end of a corridor can be heard clearly hundreds of feet away. But here's where it gets fascinating. Ancient architects didn't just want loud echoes, they wanted controlled ones. By angling walls slightly or carving precise concave shapes into ceilings, they could stretch a single note into a lingering hum or make voices overlap in eerie harmonies. Take the famous Whispering Gallery in St. Paul's Cathedral. Though built later, it works on the same principles mastered millennia earlier. A murmur against one curved wall travels seamlessly to the opposite side, as if the stone itself is passing secrets. Now imagine that effect in a Mayan ball court, where the thud of a rubber ball would have transformed into a thunderous proclamation, or in Egypt's Karnak temple, where a priest's invocation might have swelled into a chorus of phantom voices. Modern researchers use laser scans and digital audio mapping to unravel these mysteries, but the real revelation is how intentional these designs were. In Chavín de Huanta, Peru, underground ducks channel sound to make jaguar growls seem to emanate from statues. In Ireland's Newgrange, a passage grave aligns so precisely with the winter solstice sunrise that certain frequencies resonate like a tuning fork. These weren't happy accidents, they were the result of generations observing how sound behaved in nature, then replicating those effects in stone. What's most astonishing? They did it all without a single equation. No decibel meters, no wave diagrams, just an intimate understanding of how space shapes sound. When you clap your hands in Greece's Epidorus theater, the sound hits the stepped seating at intervals that prevent echoes from smearing together. The result, every word from the stage reaches the back row with crystal clarity, 2,300 years before modern acoustics was born. That's not just engineering, it's artistry. And it begs the question, if they could achieve this with rudimentary tools, what else did they know about the unseen world of vibrations that we're still rediscovering today? Now let's step inside one of the most enigmatic structures ever built, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Most of us know it as a colossal tomb, a mathematical wonder, or an astronomical calendar. But hidden within its limestone walls lies another layer of genius, an acoustic design so precise, it turns the entire pyramid into a resonant instrument. Walk through its cramped ascending passageway, and you'll notice something strange. Your footsteps don't just echo, they seem to multiply, bouncing off the walls in a rhythmic cascade. This isn't an accident. The pyramid's narrow corridors and precisely angled chambers act like a giant sound filter, amplifying certain frequencies while dampening others. Take the king's chamber, that imposing granite room deep in the pyramid's heart. Modern experiments show something extraordinary. When you produce a low-frequency tone inside it, the chamber doesn't just echo the sound, it sustains it, stretching a single note into a deep, pulsing hum. Researchers have measured this effect and found something even more intriguing. The frequency that resonates most powerfully is close to the rhythm of a resting human heartbeat. Imagine the impact on an initiate standing in that chamber thousands of years ago, surrounded by flickering torchlight, feeling their own pulse synchronize with the walls around them. It's no wonder some theories suggest these spaces were used for rituals designed to induce altered states of consciousness. But the pyramid's acoustic tricks don't stop there. The so-called relieving chambers above the king's chamber, long thought to be structural supports, might have another purpose. Their layered granite slabs create a baffling effect, scattering sound waves in unpredictable ways. Chant a prayer or strike a drum in this space, and the acoustics would have made it sound like the voices were coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. To an ancient worshipper, that wouldn't just feel mystical, it would feel divine. What's truly mind-bending is how this ties into the pyramid's celestial alignment. Just as its shafts point to specific stars, its acoustics seem tuned to specific frequencies, almost as if the builders saw sound and sky as two parts of the same cosmic language. Recent studies even suggest the pyramid's interior geometry acts like a sonic lens, focusing certain vibrations toward the king's chamber while canceling out others. That level of precision shouldn't have been possible with the tools of the time, and yet there it is. So were the pyramid's architects just brilliant engineers, or were they also master composers, weaving sound into stone? Maybe the answer lies in the way ancient cultures viewed resonance, not just as physics, but as a bridge between worlds. After all, if a chant in the right space could summon the gods, then every echo wasn't just a reflection, it was a reply. Stonehenge stands silent now, its towering stones weathered by millennia of wind and rain. But if we could turn back time, we might hear something extraordinary, a sacred soundscape now lost to history. While most discussions focus on how these massive stones align with the sun and stars, there's another dimension to their design, one that resonates with the very air around them. Imagine standing inside the original complete circle, where the now missing blue stones once formed a tight inner ring. A single drumbeat here wouldn't just fade into the open air, it would ripple outward, bouncing between the carefully placed monoliths, creating a cascade of echoes that felt less like sound and more like something alive. Acoustic studies reveal something startling. The original layout of Stonehenge acted like a giant resonant chamber. The blue stones, with their unique mineral composition, had a peculiar effect on sound waves. When struck or sung near, they didn't just reflect sound, they subtly altered it, adding a faint metallic hum to voices or deepening the resonance of drums. Researchers testing replicas of the site found that certain frequencies would linger in the air far longer than expected, as if the stones themselves were holding onto the sound. This wasn't just an accident of architecture, it was a deliberate acoustic environment, tuned to transform human ritual into something otherworldly. But why would ancient builders go to such lengths? The answer might lie in the way sound shapes consciousness. In cultures worldwide, rhythmic chanting and drumming have been used to induce trance states, and Stonehenge's design would have magnified that effect exponentially. A chorus of voices chanting inside the circle wouldn't just be heard, it would be felt, vibrating through the ground and echoing back in overlapping waves. Some researchers even suggest the missing slaughter stone once served as a platform where priests or shamans stood, its flat surface acting as a sounding board to project their voices across the entire site. The most haunting clue lies in the site's evolution. Over centuries, Stonehenge was rearranged, stones were moved, added, or taken away. While these changes are often attributed to shifting astronomical knowledge, they might also reflect a changing relationship with sound. Early versions of the henge, with their tighter bluestone circles, would have created intense, almost overwhelming reverberations. Later layouts with more open spacing may have softened these effects, trading raw acoustic power for clarity of speech. It's as if the very purpose of the site evolved from a place where sound itself was sacred to one where words took precedence. Today, with so many stones gone or fallen, we can only catch whispers of what once was. But stand in the right spot on a still evening, and sometimes the wind carries a faint reminder, a hum, a vibration, as if the stones remember the songs they once held. Perhaps Stonehenge wasn't just a calendar or a temple, but something even more extraordinary, a bridge between worlds where the right combination of chant and echo could make the boundary between earth and spirit feel paper thin. And that raises a tantalizing question. If we could hear it as they did, would we finally understand what these silent giants have been trying to tell us all along? Deep beneath the towering cliffs of Mount Parnassus, the Temple of Apollo at Delphi held a secret, one that wasn't just whispered by the Pythia, but amplified by the very stones around her. Picture the scene. A seeker stands trembling in the dimly lit temple, their question hanging in the air as the priestess settles onto her tripod above the sacred fissure. The air smells faintly of laurel and earth, and then her voice changes, not louder but different, as if the walls themselves are leaning in to repeat her words. That eerie echo wasn't just theatrical effect, it was architectural alchemy. The temple's addition was a masterclass in acoustic manipulation. Unlike the pyramid's precise reverberations or Stonehenge's resonant bluestones, Delphi's power came from controlled chaos. The chamber's limestone walls, porous and uneven, didn't produce clean echoes. Instead, they fractured sound, sending back fractured fragments of the Pythia's utterances that seemed to come from multiple directions at once. Add the lightheadedness induced by ethylene gas rising from the fissure, and you have a perfect storm of sensory disorientation. A single phrase like "know thyself" might return as overlapping whispers, some delayed just enough to feel like divine interruptions. But the real stroke of genius was how the temple used the pilgrims themselves as part of the soundscape. Ancient accounts describe how visitors would chant or clap as they approached, their voices bouncing off the temple's curved retaining walls. By the time they reached the Aditon, their own echoes would have followed them inside, mingling with the Pythia's trance speech until it was impossible to tell where human sound ended and the earth's murmurs began. This wasn't just clever engineering, it was psychological theater, designed to make every word feel like it came from the cosmos. Modern experiments reveal another layer to the mystery. The temple's orientation funnels wind into a natural whistle as it passes through the Phaedriates cliffs, creating a low, constant hum that ancient visitors would have attributed to Apollo's presence. Combine that with the Aditon's sound-diffusing surfaces, and you have a space where even silence felt charged with meaning. No wonder the Pythia's prophecies were so open to interpretation. In that acoustic environment, every rustle, every breath, every distant rumble could feel like part of the message. What makes Delphi extraordinary isn't just that its architects understood acoustics, but that they weaponized them. They knew that truth isn't just heard, it's felt, and that the right combination of stone and sound could make mortal words feel infinite. In a way, the real oracle wasn't the Pythia at all, it was the temple itself, bending voices until they sounded like the gods. Step inside a medieval cathedral, and you don't just hear music, you feel it. Those towering vaulted ceilings aren't just architectural marvels. They're giant resonators designed to catch every note of a Gregorian chant and stretch it into something timeless. Picture this: a single voice rises in the darkened nave, and within seconds the sound multiplies, bouncing between stone pillars and arched ribs until the air itself seems to vibrate. This isn't just singing, it's alchemy where human breath transforms into something celestial. The secret lies in what acousticians call reverberation time, how long sound lingers before fading. In Notre Dame, that's over 8 seconds, meaning every chord from the choir would have rolled through the space like thunder, layering over itself until the harmonies felt infinite. But here's the genius part: medieval builders didn't just stumble upon this effect, they crafted it. Those soaring Gothic arches aren't just beautiful, they're precision instruments. By angling walls and shaping vaults, architects could control exactly how sound traveled, ensuring that sacred music didn't just reach the congregation, it enveloped them. Take the cathedral's ribbed vaults, for example. Those intricate stone webs aren't merely decorative, they scatter sound waves in deliberate patterns, preventing echoes from clashing while amplifying certain frequencies. A low chant in the key of D might resonate deeper here than in an ordinary room, as if the building itself were humming along. Even the stained glass plays a role. Its uneven surface diffuses high notes gently, softening shrill tones while letting richer bass frequencies reverberate. And then there's the matter of timing. Medieval monks didn't just sing, they composed for the space. Gregorian chants move slowly, with pauses between phrases that allow the cathedral's echo to finish each line naturally. It's a dialogue between voice and vault, where the silence between notes is just as meaningful as the sound. Modern recordings in these spaces reveal something haunting. When done right, the choir and the building become indistinguishable, merging into a single, unearthly instrument. But perhaps the most profound revelation lies in the intent. These cathedrals weren't just designed to amplify sound, they were meant to mirror the harmony of the cosmos. To a medieval mind, the mathematical ratios governing musical intervals were the same as those ordering the heavens. When a chant echoed through the nave, it wasn't just music, it was a recreation of divine harmony, a physical manifestation of the celestial spheres in motion. Walk through Chartres or Canterbury today, and you can still feel that legacy. Even empty, these spaces seem to hum with remembered sound, as if the stones have absorbed centuries of prayer. That's no accident. It's proof that the greatest architects didn't just build walls, they composed with them, turning stone into song and silence into something sacred. Stand at the base of Chichen Itza's towering temple of Kukulcán, clap your hands once, and something extraordinary happens. The sound doesn't just echo. It transforms. What bounces back isn't a simple repetition, but a series of sharp, rhythmic chirps, like the call of the sacred Quetzal bird slicing through the jungle air. This isn't an accident of architecture. It's a carefully engineered illusion, one that turns human sound into something avian and divine. The Maya didn't just build a pyramid, they built a conduit between earth and sky, where even a clap could become a messenger. The secret lies in the pyramid staircase, each step a precisely calculated sound diffuser. When a sharp noise like a clap hits those steep, angular surfaces, the sound fractures into rapid-fire echoes. But here's the brilliance: the steps aren't uniform. Their spacing and height create staggered delays, so instead of a single returning echo, you hear a cascading chirp that climbs in pitch, mirroring the Quetzal's rising call. Modern acoustical studies reveal the math behind the magic. The timing between echoes matches the natural frequency modulation of the bird's cry. It's as if the pyramid's architects distilled the essence of a sacred sound into stone. But why go to such lengths? For the Maya, the Quetzal wasn't just a bird, it was a celestial intermediary, its feathers worn by kings as proof of divine favor. By making their pyramid sing like this creature, they blurred the line between architecture and animism. Imagine a ritual here at dawn, when the first clap of a priest's staff would have sent Quetzal calls rippling across the plaza, convincing worshippers the gods were near. Even the pyramid's name hints at this: Kukulcán, the feathered serpent, a deity who moved between worlds as easily as sound moves through air. Recent laser scans uncovered another layer to the design. The temple's 4 staircases aren't just visually symmetrical, they're acoustically paired. Clap at one corner and the chirps seem to dance around the structure, leaping from stair to stair. Some researchers suggest this created an auditory illusion of movement, making it seem as if the Quetzal were circling overhead. It's a reminder that ancient architects thought in 3 dimensions. Their designs weren't just meant to be seen, but experienced, with sound guiding the narrative as much as sight. What's most humbling is how this all worked without a single blueprint in our modern sense. The Maya likely refined their designs over generations, using trial and error to tune the pyramid's voice until it matched nature's perfect pitch. Today, when tourists laugh in delight as their claps turn to birdsong, they're not just witnessing an acoustic trick, they're hearing a 1,000-year-old conversation between humanity and the heavens, one that still echoes with purpose. Descend 30 feet beneath the sun-baked earth of Malta, and you'll find a place where the very walls sing. The Hal-Saflieni Hypogeum isn't just an underground temple. It's a prehistoric instrument carved from solid limestone, a labyrinth where sound bends to the will of stone. Step into the so-called oracle chamber, whisper a single word, and something impossible happens. Your voice doesn't just echo, it multiplies, swelling into a chorus of harmonic overtones that linger in the air like ghosts. This isn't an acoustic quirk. It's proof that 5,000 years ago, someone understood the physics of sound better than we ever imagined. What makes this space so extraordinary isn't just its age, but its precision. The chamber's curved walls and domed ceiling act like a giant resonator, but with a twist, they don't amplify all frequencies equally. Speak at a normal pitch and your words scatter. But drop your voice into a low chant and the room comes alive, turning vibrations into something you don't just hear, but feel in your ribs. Modern acoustical analysis reveals why. The chamber's dimensions perfectly reinforce frequencies around 110 Hz, a range known to alter brainwave patterns and induce trance states. Coincidence unlikely, given the hundreds of carved niches that seem positioned to scatter sound in deliberate patterns. Then there's the eerie phenomenon of the detached echo. In one specific spot, a spoken syllable doesn't just repeat, it fractures into a cascade of tones, as if the room is harmonizing with itself. Researchers suspect this effect comes from sound waves ricocheting between the chamber's precisely angled walls and the network of smaller cells branching off it. It's as if the entire Hypogeum was tuned like a giant stone flute, with each chamber adding its own note to the chorus, but the real mystery lies in the bones. Excavations revealed thousands of human remains, many clustered near the most acoustically active areas. Were these spaces designed to amplify death rites, using sound to guide spirits? Or perhaps the vibrations themselves were part of the ritual? Archaeologists found evidence of red ochre, a pigment often linked to altered states, smeared in patterns that align with the chamber's acoustic hotspots. What's undeniable is the intent. Whoever carved these chambers didn't just dig caves, they composed them, shaping stone until it could turn a whisper into a hymn. In a world without metal tools, without written language, they mapped the invisible physics of sound with nothing but patience and keen observation. That's not primitive technology. That's genius, and it leaves us with a haunting thought. If they could hear the music in stone, what other secrets did they take to their graves? Greek theaters didn't just host plays, they perfected the art of human connection across distance. Take Epidorus, where a single tear dropped on stage could be heard clearly by someone sitting nearly 200 feet away, as if the air itself conspired to carry emotion. This wasn't magic, it was physics harnessed with uncanny precision. The secret lies in the harmony of three elements: the stepped limestone seats, the orchestra's circular floor, and the surrounding landscape. Each row of seating acts like a sound diffuser, scattering voices upward instead of letting them vanish into the sky, while the stage's curvature projects sound like the cone of a loudspeaker. But the real stroke of genius, the theater's hillside location. The natural slope doesn't just support the structure, it shields against wind, creating a quiet pocket where voices travel undisturbed. Modern engineers have tried for decades to replicate this wind-suppressing effect in open-air venues, yet even with computer modeling, none have matched the Greeks' intuitive mastery. What's often overlooked is how these acoustic principles served a deeper purpose. In a society where theater was both entertainment and civic education, ensuring every citizen from the front row elite to the distant farmer could hear equally wasn't just practical. It was democratic. The playwright Aeschylus didn't write his verses to be half heard. They were meant to strike every ear with the same clarity, binding the audience in shared experience. This ethos extended beyond drama. Political assemblies borrowed the same designs, turning acoustics into a tool of governance. When a speaker stood in the bema, his words didn't favor the privileged few. They reached all, reinforcing the radical idea that every voice and every listener mattered. Recent laser scans of Epidorus revealed another layer to its brilliance. The stepped seats aren't just flat surfaces. Their edges are subtly rounded, a detail invisible to the naked eye but critical to sound dispersion. This slight curvature prevents echoes from bouncing chaotically, ensuring words remain crisp rather than dissolving into noise. Even the spacing between seats plays a role, mathematically arranged to filter out low-frequency crowd murmurs while amplifying the actor's mid-range frequencies. It's as if the architects mapped the human voice's acoustic signature centuries before the science existed. but perhaps the most telling detail lies in what's missing. Unlike later Roman theaters adorned with marble and statuary, Greek designs favored bare limestone not just for austerity, but because porous stone absorbs excess reverberation. Every choice from material to geometry served the purity of sound. Today, when performers at Epidorus forego microphones, they're not just honoring tradition, they're proving that the best technology isn't always the newest. Sometimes it's the wisdom carved into stone 2,400 years ago, still teaching us that to hear each other clearly isn't just an engineering challenge, it's the foundation of civilization itself. Walk into one of the Ajanta caves carved painstakingly into volcanic rock over 2 millennia ago, and you'll notice something unsettling. The walls don't answer back. Unlike the echoing chambers of pyramids or cathedrals, these spaces swallow sound whole, creating voids where even a whispered prayer vanishes without a trace. This wasn't an oversight by the monks who carved them, it was the entire point. In Buddhist philosophy, enlightenment comes not from filling the mind with noise, but from confronting the profound stillness beneath it. The cave's architects achieved this through meticulous design, rough, uneven surfaces to scatter sound waves, labyrinthine passages to dissipate echoes, and small cells with low ceilings to prevent reverberation. The result, chambers so silent, modern researchers have measured them at near-echoic levels, spaces where the absence of sound becomes its own kind of presence. But the genius of Ajanta lies in its contrasts. While some cells mute noise completely, others, like the grand chaitya halls with their vaulted ceilings, subtly amplify the rhythmic chanting of sutras. This duality mirrors Buddhism's core teachings on emptiness and form. Just as a bowl's usefulness lies in its hollow center, true wisdom emerges from the interplay between sound and silence. The monks understood that deep listening isn't just about hearing. It's about perceiving the space between notes, the pause between breaths. Modern studies of these caves reveal something extraordinary. The silent cells create a physiological effect similar to sensory deprivation, slowing brain waves and heightening introspection. It's as if the stone itself guides meditators toward the void beyond thought. What's even more remarkable is how these ancient techniques foreshadowed modern acoustic science. 20th century echoic chambers, used by audio engineers to create pure silence, function on the same principles angled foam wedges replacing Ajanta's jagged walls, but serving the same purpose. Yet while modern chambers aim for technical perfection, the caves sought something deeper, not just the elimination of noise, but the revelation of what remains when noise falls away. That's why pilgrims still sit in these cells today, not to hear the divine, but to encounter the silence from which all sounds, and perhaps all things, emerge. Perhaps the most poignant lesson lies in the cave's imperfection. Unlike the mathematical precision of Greek theaters or Mayan pyramids, Ajanta's acoustics feel organic, uneven. Some corners swallow whispers, others unexpectedly magnify a sigh. This wasn't a flaw, but a deliberate reflection of life's inherent instability, a reminder that true peace isn't found in controlling our environment, but in surrendering to its unpredictability. When modern seekers enter these caves, they often report hearing something unexpected in all that silence, not emptiness but a subtle hum, like the resonance of the earth itself. Maybe that's the ultimate sacred soundscape, not one we create, but one we discover when we finally stop trying to fill the quiet. Descend into the cool darkness of an ancient Puebloan kiva, and you'll find more than just a ceremonial space. You'll step into a living instrument, meticulously designed to turn every whisper into shared experience. The circular form isn't just symbolic, it's acoustic genius. Unlike rectangular rooms where sound clusters in corners, The Kivas' smooth, continuous walls distribute voices evenly, ensuring a leader's prayer in the northern niche resonates just as clearly at the southern seating bench. This wasn't about amplifying sound, it was about democratizing it, creating an auditory equality that mirrored their communal values. The magic lies in the materials. Thick earthen walls lined with plaster don't bounce sound harshly like stone. They cradle it, absorbing sharp high frequencies while letting the deep pulse of high drums and low chants linger. Modern acoustic tests reveal something profound. These chambers naturally filter out the distracting noise of human speech consonants, abrupt sounds, while preserving the warm, unifying tones of vowel-rich chants. It's as if the Kivas were tuned to highlight not individual words, but the collective emotion behind them. But the real revelation is overhead. Those low, flat ceilings, often just tall enough to stand beneath, create an intimate acoustic pocket where voices don't soar upward and vanish, but hover at seated head height, wrapping the circle in a blanket of sound. Archaeologists experimenting with replica Kivas discovered an unexpected effect. When singers face the center fireplace, their voices blend into a single resonant tone, as if the space itself harmonizes disparate voices into unity. Perhaps most striking is how these acoustic principles reinforced social structure. Unlike the hierarchical echoes of Egyptian temples or Gothic cathedrals, where certain spots magnified priestly voices over congregants, the Kivas' design ensured no physical or auditory privileged position. Even the Sipapu, the small ceremonial hole representing the emergence place, acts as a subtle bass resonator, grounding the space's acoustics in Puebloan cosmology. When a prayer rose from this sacred axis, it didn't boom with authority. It rippled outward like water in a pond, reaching everyone with equal clarity. Today, modern architects are rediscovering these principles. Concert halls now experiment with circular designs to eliminate acoustic shadows, while meditation centers mimic the Kivas' frequency filtering to reduce mental clutter. But what ancient builders understood intuitively was that sound shapes community. In these earthen chambers, the very physics of vibration became a metaphor and a mechanism for connection, proving that sometimes the most powerful technology isn't carved in stone, but shaped from humble earth and intent. For centuries, archaeologists studied ancient sites with their eyes measuring angles, sketching layouts, cataloging artifacts. But in the late 1960s, a quiet revolution began, one that asked a radical new question. What if these stones were meant not just to be seen, but heard? Enter pioneers like Paul de Veru, who strapped microphones to megaliths and played sine waves through Neolithic tombs, treating entire landscapes like forgotten soundboards. Their findings shattered old assumptions. That stone circle in Scotland, it's not just aligned to the solstice, it's tuned to resonate at the exact frequency of a chanting human voice. The Mayan ball court's parallel walls, they don't just frame the game, they transform the thud of a rubber ball into a thunderclap audible for miles. This wasn't just archaeology with better tools, it was an entirely new way of thinking. Armed with laser scanners and 3D modeling software, researchers began mapping sound waves as meticulously as they once measured pottery shards. At Ireland's Newgrange, they discovered something astonishing. The passage grave's interior acts like a giant Helmholtz resonator, amplifying certain frequencies while silencing others. The effect, a chant at the winter solstice sunrise, doesn't just echo, it swells as if the tomb itself is singing along. Similar studies at Malta's Hypogeum revealed hidden chambers acting like acoustic filters, subtly altering voices to sound deeper, more resonant. Suddenly, patterns emerged across cultures separated by millennia, curved walls in Peru matching those in Turkey, niche placements in India echoing those in Britain. These weren't coincidences, they were signatures of a lost science. The real breakthrough came when researchers started playing these sites like instruments. At Chavin-de-Huanta, archaeologists recreated ancient conch shell trumpets and blew them through the temple stone ducts, the same ones that once made jaguar statues seem to growl. The result, a bone-chilling roar that seems to come from everywhere at once, exactly as described in 2,000-year-old texts. In Greece, they struck bronze plates at Mycenaean Tholos tombs, revealing how the domed ceilings turned simple rhythms into cascading echoes that mimic the underworld's rivers from Homer's Odyssey. These experiments didn't just prove ancient builders manipulated sound, they showed why. When every echo in a temple mirrors a sacred animal's cry, or a chant in a tomb seems answered by unseen voices, belief isn't just taught, it's felt in the gut. Perhaps most humbling is how this research rewrites history's biases. For generations, Western scholars dismissed indigenous accounts of singing stones or talking caves as myth. Now, spectral analysis confirms the Maori's past sites in New Zealand were acoustically engineered to amplify orators, just as oral traditions claimed. Aboriginal songlines in Australia, long misunderstood as mere navigation aids, are now proven to align with natural sound mirrors in the landscape, where a clapstick's rhythm can travel impossible distances. It's a reminder that ancient people weren't just builders or artists, they were acoustic engineers, composing spaces where sound didn't just carry information, but meaning. Today, this work continues with even more astonishing tools. Archaeoacousticians use ambisonic microphones to capture 3D soundscapes, letting us hear a Bronze Age ritual as its participants did. Virtual reality reconstructions of Mayan temples reveal how specific stair angles turn rain into rhythmic music. And at Stonehenge, missing stones are digitally rebuilt to recreate the site's original sound halo, proving the bluestones didn't just mark sacred space, they defined it through vibration. What began as curiosity about echoes has become a new lens for understanding civilization itself, revealing that long before we wrote our stories, we sang them into stone. And sometimes, if you listen closely enough, you can still hear the walls whispering back. Picture a monk striking a Tibetan singing bowl inside a cavernous temple. The moment the metal vibrates, the entire room seems to hum in response. This isn't just music, it's a dialogue between object and space, where every note lingers just long enough to blur the line between sound and stillness. Across continents and centuries, sacred instruments weren't merely played, they were tuned to their surroundings, as if the architects of these spaces left hidden instructions in the stone. Take Newgrange's massive passage tomb in Ireland, where experiments show that a steady drumbeat at 65 beats per minute synchronizes perfectly with the chamber's natural reverberation. The result, a pulsing rhythm that seems to come not from the drummer's hands, but from the earth itself, each echo layering into the next until time feels suspended. What's striking is how universal this practice was. In Tibet, singing bowls were cast to resonate at frequencies that match the throat chants of monks, creating harmonic overtones that vibrate through bone and tissue. The Celtic bodhran, with its deep, muted thump, was designed to complement the acoustics of stone circles and underground chambers, where rapid beats would dissolve into noise, but slow, measured strikes would amplify into something hypnotic. Even the Aboriginal didgeridoo, with its droning, circular breath, finds its full voice inside natural rock shelters that stretch and warp its sound into something otherworldly. These weren't coincidences, they were collaborations between craftsmen and architects who understood that the right sound in the right space could transcend entertainment and become medicine. Modern science is just beginning to decode why these pairings feel so potent. Studies at ancient sites reveal that certain frequencies, particularly those between 90 and 110 Hz, can trigger physiological responses, slowing brain waves and inducing trance-like states. When a drumbeat aligns with a chamber's resonant frequency, it doesn't just enter the ears, it vibrates through the body, synchronizing heartbeats and breath in a phenomenon known as entrainment. That's why rituals from West African drum circles to Siberian shaman ceremonies often follow repetitive, steady rhythms. They're not just cultural traditions, but bioacoustic technologies honed over millennia to guide minds into altered states. But the most fascinating clue lies in the artifacts left behind. In Anatolia, archaeologists found drums buried beneath temple floors, positioned to amplify sound upward through hollow chambers. In Peru, conch shell trumpets were discovered nestled in niches that turned their shrill blasts into echoing roars. These weren't randomly placed, they were carefully orchestrated, with each instrument acting like a key designed to unlock its space's hidden acoustics. Some researchers now believe these practices hint at a lost science of vibrational healing, where sound wasn't just heard, but prescribed with specific frequencies used to soothe pain, focus thought, or even stimulate healing. Perhaps that's the true lesson echoing through these ancient spaces. In a world without synthetic drugs or electric light, sound was the original technology of transcendence, a tool to reshape consciousness, commune with the divine, and heal the body. When we listen to these age-old pairings of instrument and architecture, we're not just hearing music, we're hearing the blueprint of a forgotten wisdom, one that understood the universe doesn't just move in silence, it sings. And sometimes, if we're still enough, we can still catch the melody, stretching across Malta's limestone plateaus like ghostly railway tracks. The ancient Cart-Ruts have puzzled archaeologists for centuries. These parallel grooves, worn deep into the bedrock, twist and converge in patterns that defy simple explanation. But what if these mysterious pathways weren't just for transport? What if they were part of an elaborate soundscape designed to turn human movement into music? Picture a procession winding along these channels, each footstep echoing through the stone, the rhythmic thud of sandals against grooved rock sending vibrations pulsing downward into hidden chambers below. The ruts aren't random. Many align precisely with natural caves and artificial hypogeum, creating a subterranean amplification system where every step could resonate like a drumbeat. Recent experiments reveal something astonishing. When researchers recreated a procession along these tracks, the vibrations traveled through the limestone with eerie efficiency, emerging in underground spaces as a low, rhythmic hum. The grooves act like natural tuning forks, channeling specific frequencies downward. Some ruts even intersect at angles that create harmonic intervals, suggesting the paths might have been played like strings on an instrument. The most compelling evidence lies in the Clapham Junction complex, where ruts cluster near the Hal-Saflieni Hypogeum, a site already proven to have extraordinary acoustics. Walk these grooves toward the Hypogeum's entrance, and the sound of your steps changes, gaining a metallic ring as if the stone itself is singing. But why go to such length? For Malta's temple builders, sound wasn't just decoration, it was a bridge between worlds. The island's folklore speaks of ghost processions, whose footsteps could be heard but never seen, echoing from beneath the earth. Modern seismographs have detected something unexpected. The ruts amplify not just human-made sounds, but natural ones. During storms, rainwater rushing through the grooves produces tonal vibrations that hum through connected caves, turning the entire landscape into a giant lithophone. It's as if the architects weaponized the island's geology, using erosion not as an enemy but as a collaborator. The real mystery is the intentionality. These ruts weren't haphazard wear patterns. They were meticulously maintained, their edges often resharpened over generations. Some curved deliberately around outcrops to preserve acoustic continuity, while others dead end at cliff edges where the sea would have magnified their echoes. Even their depth varies rhythmically, creating a waveform effect that modern audio software reveals as a deliberate pattern. This wasn't just functional engineering, it was vibrational choreography, a way to make pilgrimage itself a form of music. What's most humbling is how this redefines sacred geography. We're used to thinking of ancient soundscapes as confined to temples or theaters, but Malta's ruts suggest the entire landscape was part of the composition. Walk these paths today, and you'll feel it the way your footsteps seem to travel beyond you, as if the earth remembers the rhythms of those who came before. Perhaps that was the ultimate purpose, not just to guide bodies, but to harmonize them with the pulse of the land, turning every journey into a song only the stones could fully hear. Step inside the Basilica of Maxentius on a crowded morning in ancient Rome, and you wouldn't just hear a speech, you'd feel it. The moment an orator's voice rang out, the walls threw it back in layers, each word stretching into the next until the air itself seemed to vibrate with authority. This wasn't just architecture, it was psychological theater, with a reverberation time of 7 seconds longer than many modern concert halls. The Basilica transformed human speech into something monumental, making even ordinary announcements sound like divine proclamations. The Romans didn't just build spaces for speech, they engineered them to elevate speech, turning rhetoric into an immersive experience where the very walls conspired to magnify power. The genius lay in the Basilica's proportions. That soaring vaulted ceiling wasn't just for show. It acted like a giant sound reflector, capturing voices and bouncing them downward toward the crowd. Meanwhile, the curved apse at one end functioned like a natural amplifier, focusing sound waves so precisely that a speaker could address thousands without straining. Modern acoustic simulations reveal how clever this design was. The Basilica's dimensions created a sweet spot where a speaker's voice would gain richness and depth, while the echoes from the side aisles arrived just late enough to reinforce the main sound without drowning it. The effect, every pause, every inflection, every dramatic whisper would have been heard with crystalline clarity, even by those standing hundreds of feet away. But the real mastery was in the manipulation. Unlike Greek theaters that democratized sound, Roman basilicas weaponized it. The prolonged echo wasn't just an accident of physics, it was a tool of intimidation, making speakers seem larger than life. Imagine a senator's accusation rolling through the hall in overlapping waves, or an emperor's decree reverberating like thunder long after his lips stopped moving. This wasn't just persuasion, it was acoustic dominance, a way to make authority feel inevitable. Even the materials played a role. The basilica's marble surfaces didn't just look imperial, they sounded imperial, adding a cold, metallic ring to voices that reinforced their unassailable power. What's striking is how these techniques foreshadowed modern sound design. Today's stadiums and political rally spaces use electronic amplification to achieve similar effects, but the principle remains the same: control the sound and you control the crowd. The Romans understood this intuitively. They knew that when words linger in the air, they also linger in the mind, blurring the line between human speech and something supernatural. No wonder early Christians later repurposed these spaces for worship. The Basilica's acoustics turned sermons into revelations, making the voice of God feel palpably close. Yet the most telling detail lies in the ruins themselves. The Basilica of Maxentius, like others of its kind, was strategically placed at the heart of civic life, adjacent to forums and temples. This wasn't just about convenience, it was about acoustics as urban design. The building's orientation funneled street noise away while capturing and amplifying the voices inside, creating a sonic oasis of authority amidst the city's chaos. Walk those crumbled aisles today, and you can still sense the ghost of that effect. Stand in the apse and clap your hands, and the echoes come back fractured but undeniable, like whispers from a time when stone knew how to make emperors sound like gods. Walk the winding corridors of Knossos at dawn, and you'll notice something unsettling. The walls don't just block your path, they curate sound. What begins as a clear whisper near the entrance fractures into disjointed echoes by the third turn, certain syllables vanishing entirely while others ring with unnatural clarity. This wasn't just a quirk of construction, it was acoustic alchemy. The labyrinth's tight, zigzagging passages functioned like a giant audio filter, exploiting a phenomenon called phase cancellation. When sound waves of identical frequencies collide at just the right angle, they don't add up, they erase each other. The Minoans harnessed this physics to create spaces where only fragmented phrases could survive the journey, turning their labyrinth into a whispering gallery with a secret handshake. Archaeoacoustic studies reveal the precision behind this design. At specific junctions where corridors branch at 70-degree angles, low-frequency sounds like the murmurs of a crowd dissipate almost completely. Meanwhile, higher pitches like hissing consonants or bronze chimes bounce onward, purified of their original context. The effect is chillingly deliberate. Stand in one alcove, and you might hear a priest's invocation clearly. Move 3 paces left, and the same words disintegrate into nonsense, as if the stones themselves decide who's worthy of understanding. Modern experiments with sine waves confirm this. Knossos' layout creates acoustic shadows, zones where only narrow frequency bands penetrate. To an initiate led blindfolded through these passages, the experience would have felt like hearing half a conversation with the gods, the rest tantalizingly out of reach. But the real stroke of genius was how this merged myth with mechanics. The legend of Theseus and the Minotaur takes on new meaning when you realize the labyrinth wasn't just hiding a monster, it was hiding knowledge. Ancient texts describe initiation rites where neophytes navigated the corridors alone, their ears straining for fragments of sacred verses that would guide them forward. Those who memorized the correct rhythm or pitch could follow the sound breadcrumbs to safety. Others wandered until the echoes confused them into surrender. It's no coincidence that many Bronze Age labyrinths feature carved symbols resembling musical notation near these decision points, not decorations but sonic signposts. What's most remarkable is how this technology reappears across cultures. Egypt's Temple of Hathor at Dendera has a similar whispering gallery where only certain niches transmit sound from the inner sanctum to outer courtyards. In Peru, Chavín de Huanta's underground maze uses stone ducts to filter shamanic chants into animal growls. The common thread, these weren't just architectural tricks, they were psychoacoustic tools, leveraging sound's physical properties to gatekeep spiritual experience. When every echo feels like a test, when walls seem to listen and judge, belief isn't just taught, it's earned through the very act of hearing. Perhaps that's the labyrinth's enduring power. It reminds us that some truths aren't meant to be broadcast, but discovered that wisdom often lies not in the message itself, but in learning how to hear it. In a world saturated with noise, there's something profoundly ancient in the idea that silence, too, can speak if you know where to stand. Stand at the center of Chichen Itza's great ball court, clap your hands once, and time itself seems to fracture. What returns isn't an echo, but a cascade of distinct replies, each bouncing off the towering walls at staggered intervals like footsteps in a stone corridor. This isn't just an acoustic curiosity. It's a carefully engineered reenactment of the Popol Vuh's most sacred journey, where the hero twins descended into Xibalba, the Mayan underworld and outwitted the gods of death through cunning and ritual. Every game played here wasn't merely sport, it was sonic storytelling, with the court's architecture transforming each thud of the rubber ball into an auditory map of the cosmos. The secret lies in the court's parallel walls, standing over 26 feet tall and precisely spaced to create what acousticians call a flutter echo. Unlike a single reverberation, this effect produces rapid, distinct repetitions of sound, typically 3 to 5 audible echoes for every sharp noise. Modern measurements reveal something astonishing. The delay between echoes matches the rhythmic pacing of ceremonial processions described in Mayan codices. When players struck the heavy rubber ball weighing up to 9 pounds against these walls during a game, the resulting thumps would have mimicked the hero twins' footsteps in the underworld, each impact a beat in a sacred auditory narrative. But the genius goes deeper. The ball courts weren't just passive resonators, they were interactive instruments. At certain points, like the stone scoring rings mounted high on the walls, the acoustics changed dramatically. A ball striking near these rings produces a deeper, more resonant tone, while shots against the smooth lower walls create sharper, quicker echoes. Archaeologists suggest this wasn't accidental. The varied sounds may have represented different challenges in the Xibalba myth, with players acoustically reenacting the twins' trials, the dull thud of a failed shot symbolizing a misstep in the underworld, while a ringing strike through the hoop echoed their ultimate victory. The most haunting evidence comes from the court's end zones. At Kapan's ball court, researchers discovered that the stone markers where players knelt are positioned at precise acoustic nodes. Whisper a prayer here and your voice carries with unnatural clarity to the opposite end, while remaining inaudible to those standing just feet away. This creates an eerie effect where only certain participants, likely priests or captains, could hear key instructions, mirroring the Popol Vuh theme of hidden knowledge guiding the twins through Xibalba's deceptive halls. What's truly revolutionary is how these courts blended physics and faith. The rubber ball itself was sacred. Its bouncing properties, unlike any other Mesoamerican material, made it a symbol of the sun's cyclical journey. When struck, the ball's natural frequencies interacted with the court's dimensions to produce subsonic vibrations, frequencies below 20 Hz that humans feel more than hear. Modern experiments show these vibrations can induce disorientation or awe, physiological responses that would have amplified the game's spiritual intensity. Today, when tourists clap their hands in these empty arenas, they're not just hearing clever acoustics, they're eavesdropping on an ancient theatrical tradition where architecture, athletics, and acoustics merged into something transcendent. The Mayans didn't just watch the ball game, they felt it in their bones as the very stones whispered back the oldest story they knew, one about sound, survival, and the sacred play of echoes that still haunts these silent courts today. Rising from the sands like frozen bolts of lightning, Egypt's obelisks have long been seen as silent monuments to the sun, towering symbols of pharaonic power carved from single blocks of red granite. But tap one with a mallet and the truth hums through your bones. These aren't just solar icons, they're colossal tuning forks, vibrating at frequencies so low they ripple through the desert like invisible tides. Recent acoustic studies reveal something astonishing. When struck at their base, obelisks emit tones between 35 and 40 Hz, a range barely audible to human ears but palpable as a throbbing pressure in the chest. To stand beside one during a ritual strike wouldn't just be an experience of sound, but of physical resonance, as if the earth itself were humming along. The genius lies in their material and form. Aswan granite, dense and crystalline, transmits vibrations with minimal energy loss, while the obelisk's tapered shape acts like an acoustic antenna, channeling sound waves upward. Pair two obelisks facing each other, as they often stood in temple forecourts, and the physics become magical. The space between them would have thrummed with standing waves, zones where sound pressure doubled or cancelled out entirely. Walk through this invisible lattice during a ceremony, and your body would have passed through pockets of silence and intensity, creating the visceral illusion of stepping between worlds. Modern experiments at Luxor's surviving obelisks show these zones align perfectly with processional paths, suggesting priests choreographed movements to amplify or mute ritual chants at key moments. But the real revelation is how these stones interacted with their environment. Desert air, dry and still, carries low frequencies farther than humid climates, a fact the Egyptians likely observed. At dawn, when temperature gradients create natural sound channels, an obelisk's tone could travel miles, turning the entire Nile Valley into a resonant chamber. Texts from Karnak describe morning rituals where priests struck bronze plates at the base of obelisks, timing their strikes to coincide with the first sunlight hitting the apex. The effect, a convergence of light and vibration, as if the monument were awakening with both visible and invisible energy. Perhaps most intriguing are the obelisk's hidden acoustics. Many have hollow chambers at their bases, now filled with debris, but originally likely contained resonating objects, bronze bowls or stretched membranes that would have amplified specific harmonics. Some scholars suggest the controversial Baghdad Battery artifacts might relate to this practice, generating subtle electrical charges that could interact with the stone's piezoelectric properties. Whether or not that's true, the obelisk's placement near underground water tables hints at another layer of sophistication. Groundwater amplifies low-frequency vibrations, meaning these monoliths may have been tuned to the land itself. What changes when we hear these monuments instead of just seeing them? Suddenly, the ceremonial texts make new sense. References to the voice of the Benben stone or the trembling of the horizon take on literal meaning. The obelisks weren't just symbols of solar power, they were transducers, turning human ritual into earth-shaking resonance. In a civilization where creation myths spoke of a primordial hum bringing order from chaos, these stones may have been the closest thing to hearing the god's own frequency. And that raises a tantalizing question. If we could strike one today with the right force, in the right conditions, would the desert still remember how to sing back? Walk across the wooden floors of Kyoto's Nijo Castle, and the ground beneath you sings a high, melodic chirp that seems to rise from the very grain of the planks. These nightingale floors weren't just an ingenious security system to detect intruders. They were a carefully tuned instrument, their nails and brackets adjusted to resonate at precise musical intervals. In the hands of kabuki and no performers, this accidental music became part of the art itself. Every footfall, every deliberate slide of an actor's sandal wasn't just movement, it was a note in an invisible score, harmonizing with chants and shamisen strings to create a living soundscape. The magic lies in the physics of the wood. Japanese cypress, chosen for its durability and tonal qualities, was planed to specific thicknesses that amplified certain frequencies while dampening others. Beneath the surface, metal brackets called yuji were strategically placed to create friction points, ensuring the floor didn't just squeak, it sang, with pitches that complemented the performer's vocal range. During intense no-dramas where a single wrong step could break the spell, the floor's whispers acted as an auditory guide, keeping actors in rhythm even during the most stylized, slow-motion sequences. Modern acoustic analysis reveals something extraordinary. The intervals between the chirps often match the pentatonic scales used in traditional gagaku court music, suggesting these floors were subtly tuned to Japan's ancient musical traditions. But the real brilliance was in the symbolism. In kabuki, where every gesture carries meaning, the nightingale flaws transformed practical necessity into poetic metaphor. A villain's approach might trigger a dissonant screech, while a heroine's entrance produced a delicate, fluttering melody. The flaw didn't just accompany the performance, it judged it, its sounds reflecting the moral weight of each character's steps. Even the board's placement was choreographed. Major walkways resonated at different pitches than peripheral areas, creating an auditory hierarchy that mirrored the social order on stage. What's most fascinating is how these acoustic principles extended beyond the floor. No theaters often featured hidden hollow spaces beneath the stage, some filled with ceramic jars called ohibachi that acted as natural subwoofers, deepening the percussive stomps of ghostly characters. The famous Hashigakari Bridge, where actors made their entrances, was engineered to amplify the eerie, sliding footsteps of spirits, its slightly tilted planks ensuring sound waves projected toward the audience rather than vanishing upward. Together, these elements turned the entire theater into a giant instrument, where architecture and performance were inseparably entwined. Today, when a geisha dances on these ancient boards, the chirping isn't just nostalgia, it's a living echo of a time when sound wasn't something added to space but drawn from it. In an age of digital effects and wireless mics, these wooden stages remind us that the most powerful acoustics aren't artificial enhancements, but conversations between craft and physics, where every beam and nail has a voice waiting to be heard. Beneath the bustling streets of Rome, the catacombs weave a shadowy labyrinth where sound behaves unlike anywhere else. Step into these cramped, fresco-lined tunnels, and you'll notice something unsettling. A whisper against one wall doesn't just fade into the darkness. It slithers along the curved ceilings, bouncing from one damp stone surface to another until it reaches ears dozens of feet away with eerie clarity. This phenomenon, known as a whispering gallery effect, transforms these burial chambers into something far more profound. A clandestine communication network where the persecuted early Christian community could share secrets under the very noses of Roman authorities. The physics behind this acoustic marvel are deceptively simple. The catacombs' narrow, barrel-vaulted corridors act like natural sound pipes, their smooth, parallel surfaces channeling voices with minimal distortion. But what's extraordinary is the intentionality. Many tunnels curve just enough to prevent sound from traveling in straight lines, ensuring messages could only be heard by those positioned at precise points along the route. Modern acoustic mapping reveals hotspots where a murmur would amplify dramatically, often near hidden alcoves or intersections where lookouts could stand guard. It's as if the architects didn't just dig graves, they engineered a sonic underground railroad. Imagine the scene during Rome's persecutions. A disguised believer brushes past a fellow Christian in the catacombs' gloom, their lips barely moving as they relay the location of tonight's secret Eucharist. To any lurking soldier, it would seem like nothing more than a sigh or the rustle of robes. But 50 feet away, another follower presses their ear to the wall, catching the coded phrase as clearly as if it was spoken directly into their ear. Even the catacombs' famous frescoes may have played a role. Researchers suggest the porous pigments on curved surfaces helped absorb stray frequencies, preventing echoes from betraying the whisper's origins. The most haunting evidence lies in the tunnel's modifications. Some passageways show signs of deliberate acoustic tuning niches carved at angles that deflect sound upward toward ventilation shafts, turning these openings into natural amplifiers. Others feature sudden narrowings that filter out lower pitches, ensuring only the softest, highest whispers could pass. In the crypt of the popes, where early bishops were buried, the ceiling's curvature creates a focal point where a single spoken word blooms into a chorus of overlapping echoes, mimicking the effect of many voices praying as one. What's often overlooked is how these acoustics shaped Christian ritual itself. The catacombs' sonic properties may have influenced the development of liturgical chanting, with its reliance on sustained vowels and pure tones that travel farther than speech. The Lord's Prayer, when whispered in these tunnels, takes on a spectral quality, the Aramaic syllables of Abba, Father, vibrating through the stone with peculiar intensity, as if the walls themselves were affirming the words. Today, when visitors speak in these corridors, they're not just hearing an acoustic quirk, they're touching a survival strategy forged in desperation. The catacombs remind us that sound isn't always about celebration or artistry. Sometimes it's the difference between life and death. In these silent tunnels, the walls still remember how to carry secrets, proof that even in the darkest places, the human voice finds a way to endure. Beneath the thick peat of a Swedish burial mound, archaeologists uncovered something that shouldn't exist: a row of unassuming rocks, their surfaces crisscrossed with precise fractures. Strike one with a bronze pin, and it doesn't just clink, it sings, emitting a clear, bell-like tone that lingers in the air like a voice from the underworld. These aren't ordinary stones, they're Norse lithophones, carefully selected and modified to resonate at specific pitches. The sagas called them echo stones, whispering that the dead could hear their melodies in the afterlife. But the truth is even stranger. These stones weren't just musical instruments. They were sonic maps, guiding spirits through the 9 worlds with a language of vibration. The craftsmanship is staggering. Each stone was struck at exact points to create controlled fractures, altering its natural resonance like a sculptor chiseling marble. Some ring at frequencies matching the human voice's fundamental tones, while others produce harmonics that seem to dance around the listener. Place them in sequence as they were found in the grave, and they form a rudimentary scale capable of simple melodies. Modern experiments reveal an eerie effect. When played in a burial chamber's confined space, the tones interact with the mound's architecture, creating phantom overtones that seem to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. To a Viking standing vigil, it would have felt less like playing music and more like awakening the stones themselves. But why go to such lengths? The answer lies in the Norse conception of death as a journey. Texts like the Eirik Saga Ror describe funeral rites where stones were awakened to help the deceased navigate Helheim's misty paths. Certain tones, they believed, repelled Draugr the undead, while others attracted the attention of benevolent spirits. The Swedish discovery confirms this. The lithophones were arranged in a spiral pattern mirroring the coils of Jörmungandr, the world serpent, with each stone's pitch corresponding to a symbolic location in the afterlife. A low, rumbling tone might represent the roots of Yggdrasil, while a high, shimmering note could signal the bridge to Valhalla. The most haunting clue comes from their placement. These stones weren't buried with weapons or treasure, but clustered near the corpse's head and feet, positions that, when mapped onto Norse cosmology, align with the song roads mentioned in skaldic poetry. A 10th century grave in Uppsala held a stone with 3 distinct strike points, each producing a tone that, when sequenced, matches the rhythm of a spoken charm from the Poetic Edda. It's as if the stones were mnemonics, translating oral tradition into vibrational code. What changes when we hear these relics instead of just seeing them? Suddenly, the saga's metaphors take on startling literalness. Phrases like "the rocks cried out" or "the hills sang" may have been sensory truths, not poetic flourishes. In a world without written maps, sound became the ultimate guide, a language that could cross the boundary between living and dead. Today, when a researcher's mallet makes these stones sing again after 1,000 years of silence, it's not just archaeology. It's a duet across time, proof that the Vikings didn't just fear the dark. They composed light into it, one resonant stone at a time. across the vast red deserts of Australia, an ancient navigation system hums beneath the feet of those who know how to listen. Aboriginal songlines weave melody and landscape into an inseparable whole where every rock, waterhole, and tree isn't just marked on a map but sung into existence. Picture a traveler moving through the outback, not with a compass or GPS, but with a melody passed down through generations. Each note corresponds to a specific landmark. Each rhythm mirrors the pace between sites, turning the entire continent into a living, breathing musical score. This isn't metaphor, it's precise acoustic cartography, where the land itself becomes an instrument and the human voice its interpreter. The genius of songlines lies in their dual purpose. They're both practical guide and sacred text, encoding survival knowledge where to find water, when to harvest bush foods, within rhythms and lyrics that resonate with the land's natural acoustics. Stand near Uluru at dawn and you'll feel it. The way sound carries differently here, bouncing off the monolith's curves in long, low waves. Aboriginal singers have long harnessed this, composing melodies that align with these acoustic properties, allowing songs to travel improbably far across flat terrain. Modern audio tests reveal why certain rock formations act like natural amplifiers, their surfaces reflecting sound in focused beams that can project a voice for miles in the dry desert air. But the real magic is in the details. Specific intervals in songline melodies mirror the spacing between landmarks, so the length of a held note might correspond to a day's walk. A change in pitch could signal a turn toward a canyon or soak. Even the timbre matters songs passed down in the Kimberley region feature sharp, staccato bursts that cut through the wind, while central desert lineages use droning tones that vibrate through sandstone. This isn't just music, it's a vibrational language refined over 60,000 years of listening to how the earth wants to carry sound. Recent research uncovers another layer. The land doesn't just carry these songs, it answers. In Arnhem Land, limestone caves with honeycomb interiors add natural reverb to certain notes, subtly altering the melody as it returns to the singer. Elders describe this as the land singing back, a call and response that confirms they're on the right path. Scientists now recognize this as a form of echolocation, using acoustic feedback to navigate, much like bats or dolphins. The difference here, the map isn't just functional, it's alive, its contours remembered not in ink, but in the muscles of the throat and the vibrations of the air. What's most revolutionary is how songlines challenge Western notions of ownership and boundaries. A songline doesn't just describe a route, it embodies a relationship, with each custodian adding new verses as landscapes change or knowledge expands. When a wildfire alters a terrain, the song adapts, its notes shifting to reflect new landmarks or dangers. This fluidity reveals a profound truth. To the world's oldest culture, sound isn't separate from place. It's the thread that binds people to country, past to present, the visible to the unseen. Stand in the outback today, and you might hear fragments of this legacy, a drone of a didgeridoo echoing off escarpments, the rhythmic clapsticks of a ceremony carried on the wind. These aren't performances for spectators, they're conversations with the land itself, proof that long before satellites or sextants, humans had mastered a different kind of navigation, one where every step is a note, every journey a song, and the earth itself the most eloquent composer of all. Walk into Berlin's Philharmonie, and you'll feel the ghost of Epidorus whispering through its curved wooden panels. This modern marvel, designed in the 1960s, didn't just borrow from ancient acoustics, it perfected them. The hall's vineyard-style seating wraps around the stage like a stone Greek theater, while its jagged ceiling surfaces scatter sound waves with the same precision as Mayan ball court walls. Even the materials echo the past. The spruce stage floor vibrates like a giant lithophone, amplifying cello strings the way Malta's Hypogeum once amplified chants. What's revolutionary isn't just the design, it's the realization that after 2,000 years, we're still chasing what ancient builders achieved with intuition and stone. But the legacy doesn't stop at concert halls. Step into a neonatal intensive care unit, and you might hear a faint pulsing hum, a resonant frequency tuned to 110 Hz, the same tone that vibrates through Newgrange's passage graves. Researchers discovered this frequency reduces stress hormones in premature infants, mimicking the soothing vibrations of the womb. It's no coincidence this matches the resonant frequency of many ancient sacred spaces. Those same frequencies that once guided meditators into trance states now help fragile newborns thrive. Hospitals from Tokyo to Toronto now embed these tones into architecture, proving that what healed the spirit then heals the body now. Even urban planners are listening. Barcelona's noise-reducing sidewalks use textured surfaces inspired by Mayan Sakbiob roads, fracturing traffic noise into harmless white noise. Singapore's gardens by the bay feature sonic mirrors, curved sculptures that focus bird songs into quiet zones, just as Delphi's retaining walls once focused oracle chants. The most profound innovation might be in disaster preparedness. Japan's tsunami evacuation towers now double as giant tuning forks, their hollow cores vibrating at low frequencies that travel farther through water than sirens, echoing the way Norse echo stones guided travelers through fog. What's humbling is how these modern applications keep revealing ancient wisdom. When audio engineers analyzed the Berlin Philharmonie's acoustics, they found its sweet spot, where every instrument balances perfectly, aligns with the same harmonic ratios built into Egypt's king's chamber. The difference: today's designers needed supercomputers to calculate what the pyramid's architects seemingly felt. Perhaps that's the real lesson. In our quest for perfect sound, we haven't invented new principles, we've rediscovered old ones, proving that the best technology isn't always the loudest but the most listened to. The next time you sit in a concert hall or walk through a sound-muffled park, listen closely. That's not just physics you're hearing, it's the echoes of a conversation that began when the first human struck a rock and realized stone could sing. And somewhere in the spaces between those notes, the ancient architects are still whispering their secrets, if only we're quiet enough to hear. The whispers of history are fading faster than we realize. In Malta, rising humidity from climate change softens the Hypogeum's once crystalline echoes, while the footfalls of millions of tourists at Chichen Itza have worn down the staircase edges that produce its iconic Quetzal bird chirps. Even natural silence, that rare acoustic canvas upon which ancient soundscapes were composed, is vanishing, drowned out by the growl of nearby highways or the buzz of drone cameras. But teams of audio archaeologists are racing against time with an ingenious solution: laser scanners and ambisonic microphones that map these spaces in three-dimensional sound. Projects like the Acoustic Atlas aren't just recording echoes, they're preserving the very physics of sacred spaces, capturing how sound interacts with each crack, curve, and mineral vein in stones that may not survive the century. Consider the painstaking work at Scotland's Ring of Brodgar. Researchers spent months recording every conceivable angle, striking drums at Neolithic hearths, chanting in alignment with solstice shadows, to document how this stone circle transforms human sound into something celestial. The data revealed something unexpected. Certain stones resonate at frequencies that align with Bronze Age bone flutes found nearby, suggesting the entire site might have been tuned like a giant instrument. Without these digital snapshots, such connections would vanish when erosion or rising sea levels claim the stones themselves. The challenge goes beyond technology. Authentically capturing these soundscapes means grappling with irreplaceable context. At Turkey's Göbekli Tepe, archaeologists discovered that the T-shaped pillars' sonic properties only emerge during seasonal temperature shifts, when the limestone contracts just enough to amplify low-frequency chants. Similarly, Maya ceremonial caves in Belize require specific humidity levels to produce their signature reverberations, a delicate balance now threatened by deforestation. These aren't static phenomena to record and file away. They're living acoustics that change with the environment, demanding continuous monitoring as fragile as the ecosystems sustaining them. What's at stake isn't just novelty or nostalgia. Indigenous communities from Australia to Arizona describe these sonic signatures as vital threads in cultural memory. When the Zuni people of New Mexico demonstrated how their ancestors used canyon walls to bounce prayer songs across miles, they weren't just sharing an acoustic trick, they were revealing a language of landscape that modern audio equipment struggles to translate. Microphones capture waves, but they often miss the way low frequencies vibrate through the ribcage during a Lakota, a drum ceremony, or how Balinese kekak chants interact with temple stone to create the illusion of 1,000 voices. The urgency has sparked unlikely collaborations. In Egypt, acousticians are training AI to simulate how the Great Pyramid's chambers might have sounded when their limestone casing stones were still intact surfaces that scattered high frequencies like glitter, according to ancient texts. Meanwhile, in Peru, engineers are 3D printing scale models of Chavin's acoustic ducts to study their sound-bending properties without risking damage to the fragile originals. These efforts bridge past and future, using cutting-edge tools to decode ancient ingenuity before it's silenced forever. Perhaps the most profound realization is how much we still don't know. Recent scans of Cambodia's Angkor Wat revealed hidden subterranean chambers that may have acted as Helmholtz resonators, deepening ceremonial gongs into earth-shaking tones. Without preservation, such discoveries become impossible. These soundscapes aren't relics, they're conversations. When a Navajo elder teaches children to listen for the specific echo off Spider Rock that signals safe passage, or when Greek guides demonstrate how Epidorus's seats filter coughs but amplify tears, they're passing down more than information. They're sharing a way of hearing that turns architecture into ancestor, stone into storyteller. The question isn't whether we can archive every frequency in time, it's whether we'll learn to listen closely enough to understand what they're saying. From the pyramid's resonant chambers to the whispering corridors of medieval cathedrals, these ancient spaces weren't just built, they were tuned. Every curve of stone, every angle of passage, was a deliberate stroke in a grand composition we're only beginning to decipher. Think about what that means. Long before blueprints or acoustic software, architects understood something profound about sound that modern science is still unraveling. They didn't just want their structures to stand tall, they wanted them to sing, to whisper secrets, to make the divine feel palpably close. Consider how differently we build today. Our modern skyscrapers and concert halls rely on synthetic materials and digital amplification, layers of technology separating us from the raw physics of sound. Yet when you stand in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid, where the walls hum at the frequency of a resting heartbeat, or in the nave of Chartres Cathedral, where a single chant blooms into a celestial chorus, you realize something's been lost. Ancient builders didn't need speakers or subwoofers, they collaborated with the earth, shaping stone until it unlocked vibrations that could alter consciousness itself. What's truly humbling is how universal this language was. Cultures separated by oceans and millennia, Mayans, Egyptians, Celts all arrived at the same startling conclusion. Architecture could be a bridge between worlds if you knew how to listen. The Maya ball courts that turned rubber balls into thunderclaps, the Norse burial stones that sang spirits home, the Greek theaters where a sigh onstage reached the farthest seat, these weren't accidents. They were masterclasses in a forgotten art where every echo was a note and every silence a rest in the score. Now imagine applying these lessons today. Picture a concert hall where the walls don't just reflect sound but embellish it, like Malta's Hypogeum. Envision hospitals using resonant frequencies, like those in Newgrange, to soothe patients, or city planners designing streets that carry warnings as clearly as Delphi's oracle once carried prophecies. The potential isn't just nostalgic, it's revolutionary. We're standing on the threshold of rediscovering how to build spaces that don't just house us, but transform us. So here's the invitation: listen differently. The next time you walk into an old church or pass a stone ruin, clap your hands, hum a note, pay attention to how the air answers. These ancient soundscapes remind us that buildings aren't just objects, they're conversations. And somewhere in those echoes, there's wisdom waiting to be heard again. Which of these sonic wonders would you most want to experience? Dive into the comments below, and if you've ever felt a space speak to you, share that story too. Don't forget to subscribe and join us as we keep unraveling history's hidden harmonies, one echo at